All right. So we're going to move into the practical application of this HAT model now. And the first part of it is the assessment interview. And David Reed asked me if RET means retired, and I'm not retired. It's a rehab engineering technologist. Basically, if you get the ATP, Assistive Technology Professional Certification, and you have an engineering degree, you can receive this additional credential of the rehab engineering technologist. So I have been blessed with that as an agricultural engineer. So here's our objectives for this. We've been using this word rapport a fair amount, and I think one of the speakers yesterday defined it. Was that you, Kim? How would you define rapport?
Or it's something we develop. It's not something that happens sometimes in the very first meeting for people. But I think it should be kind of an underlying goal. Because when they're talking about buy-in, I'm not sure who was mentioning buy-in.
Will you come use the microphone if you're going to talk that?
Oh, sorry.
I want you to talk that much. I want you to come and say what you're saying so everybody can hear you. I asked you because I wanted to hear.
That felt like something my husband might say to me too. If you didn't notice, I like to talk. That's funny. I think we just built rapport here. I'm pretty sure we just built some rapport. But seriously, rapport is something
We
that
just met yesterday. Serious.
time face to face. Everything we've done has been over Zoom and kind of connecting to put this together. But rapport truly is something we develop. It doesn't happen in a moment. It doesn't happen because you want it, right? Like I want rapport, but if the farmer is like, you're gonna have to kind of figure out what you're doing that will enhance that rapport. And it's usually connecting on some level with something you have in common. You know, Ned clearly has a passion for farming. And so that's so key to show to somebody that like, I get why this is hard. So I think rapport is not something you do the first time you see somebody.
Thank you. Ben, you Phillips, MSU Extension. You're a researcher, right? Vegetable. All right. You're the vegetable guy. And there's a lot of farmers in Michigan that grow vegetables. And tell me about building rapport with a vegetable grower when you meet with them. What do you do? You don't talk as much as usual. Okay?
Jump on things that to me I can relate to show that
So you listen more, and when they say something you can relate to, you jump onto that topic so that they understand you can relate with them on that. Enriching is a word. Enrichen. Okay. So you enrichen that with comments and anecdotes that you've heard from other vegetable growers, and you become one of the group. Okay. Okay. Thank you. It's not just in the disability services world that we build rapport. It's all around us. Okay, there's different reasons and motivations that people are farming, and there's different medical conditions that affect different people differently. There's the same medical conditions that affect different people differently, and just the importance of us understanding that. So first of all is the referral, and I've been asked this question before from agricultural professionals. What do we do when we get to a farm and there's a person limping around and they don't think they've got a problem, or they know that it hurts, but they certainly don't want to be disabled? No. Don't go there. Hey, I know this program that helps handicapped farmers. You ought to call them. Wrong. But build that rapport, like Ben said. Have a conversation about their farm, what's going on. Become part of the group in natural ways where you are part of the group, things that you have in common. And farmers like to talk about their farms. Good way to start. And then as you notice things, just a chatty conversation that, yeah, I see you're limping today, or boy, you kind of winced when you did that, or how to bring up that topic of being in pain seems okay, like that's part of the farmer macho. It hurts, but I'm working through it. Okay, let's talk about that. What makes it hurt, etc. Keeping that conversation going. And then, if you have some ideas in mind that might reduce the pain, or even better, you could get more work done or it would hurt less with a lower step, or just some really practical suggestions, and carry that conversation forward. Hey, maybe you could check with Ned. I heard that he's been out to a lot of farms and seen he could probably give you some good ideas, and just working towards that referral. Sometimes we have to start way back and understand it might take years. I think the longest, I remember a conversation I had, and 7 years later, they called for services. I thought they needed services 7 years ago, but thank God they called now. Today's the best day for it, and we'll take it and move forward. So the Conducting Ag Worksite Assessments book, I think this is the 5th version of it. Bill Field and the people at National AgrAbility at Purdue keep working on improvements. This is the 2021 version, and everyone has a copy. And it's basically a textbook. The first part of it goes through and explains basically everything we're talking about today. The reasons why for the assessment. There's a section on liability for you, David. And all those conversations, avoiding abandonment, talking to the caregivers, and then it's a very detailed checklist of all the different aspects of the farm. So for people who are less familiar with agriculture, there's step-by-step things to ask for different types of farms. And so this is a very useful book for you to have on hand. There's even a referral page back in the appendix, so that when you get a call from somebody, the very last page of the whole book, 76. Medical people, actually all of us, probably as professionals in some way, we have a way when somebody calls to talk with us, we've got a phone log or something. But this is how practical this book is. It's even got a referral form for you to use when the first phone call comes in. So listen closely and write fast. That's my advice for the first phone call. The more we can catch from the conversation, the less questions we have to ask, the less we seem like an interrogator. And it's an interview, not an interrogation, but we need the information. We need to understand the pieces of the puzzle. And so right away, remember that the customer's goals are the top of the list for what we need to hear and understand. Is what do they want to be accomplishing? What is mattering to them? What topics keep coming up again and again? And in this conversation, in the referral conversation, there's quantitative and objective information that we need to get. which would be what's your address, what's your farm. Yes, you have a question.
Is it legit to ask them about the data and stats?
On the first call, when it's just a referral call, and I'm trying to determine if this is a good case for me to work with, I'm not gonna ask the detailed personal questions right away. I don't need to know necessarily somebody's date of birth, and if they're married or not, etc. at the beginning. I want to hear about the farm. I want to hear about their goals and the work they're doing.
You
Yes.
do need to know if they're 92 years old.
Okay. As we get into the conversation, yes, if somebody's 92 years old, that's definitely going to play into this. But first of all, hear what their goals are, hear what they're working at, and gently ask about the medical condition. There are people who call me that don't have a disability and don't realize what I do. So when I tell them, after hearing from them what their farm is, then we tell them what we do. That this is about serving people with disability. For instance, when National AgrAbility ran the ad in the Hordes Dairyman, and it said, "Are you milking cows with a stroke?" And the farmer called me and said, "I think my cow had a stroke. What do I do?" Not my referral. I could tell you somebody else to call. Did you know that happened, Bill? Yeah, somebody thought their cow had a stroke. So after we tell them what we do, it's appropriate to move into the conversation of, can you tell me what you're struggling with on your farm? What aspects of it are difficult for you to do? And it might begin to become relevant at that time to know how old they are and some of those other questions that we would ask. But also, this is sort of observational, the qualitative and subjective information, that it's not like the numbers and the age and the type of farm, but who called? Why didn't the customer call? And taking notes on those types of observations, even in this first call. Was there a question or comment? Oh, okay. I said anyone can do this because you don't have to be an ATP or an occupational therapist to be qualified to do this intake and referral call and to listen to people and tell them what we do and get the general concept of what's happening. And I want to encourage everyone in this room that most of the things we're talking about, you don't have to be like a career rehab sciences person to be able to do it. There are some of those things, and we'll talk about it, and I'm going to point those out specifically when we get there. But I want to be encouraging that everyone in this room can do most of what we're talking about with this today. Yes.
On the conducting agricultural assessments, I just looked up on the website, looks like the 3rd edition is available there. Is the 5th edition available in digital formats?
It is. Does it say the 3rd edition? Maybe this.
No, it says 3rd edition on the website is available.
I downloaded the 5th. Bill? Website version is the most recent. So if it says 3rd,
It says, at least the document I found would indicate that it has a different picture on it.
and you got it off of the National AgrAbility website? Okay, because I downloaded this one in PDF format just recently. But will you save that and you can show it to me at lunch? Because we should fix it if that's the case. Okay. So we're going to follow a case study for the next few sessions. And this is a real person, and I want to conserve her privacy as much as possible. but she has agreed for me to use her story throughout this. And so we'll think about just a step-by-step approach for how I have worked with her over the last year. So these are my quick notes. You can grade me. Actually, it was pretty intimidating going through this session and looking how I actually do things. And I think, okay, we're talking about the building blocks of doing these assessments just right. When we get into the real world and we have time constraints and we have lots and lots of clients coming at us at once, we can't do everything perfect all the time. But we're talking about the building blocks of the best way to do things right. And so I don't mind you calling me out and saying, hey, you should have done a better job. These are my case notes from the first phone call.
So, is it okay to not write but to record the conversation? Because nowadays with phone we can record all kinds of things.
You can record someone's conversation with you. I would tell them you are. Ask them if that's okay, which might be intimidating on the first call. I don't think I would, until you've built rapport, I wouldn't say I'm going to record this. Bill?
Add a couple of things. I don't want to say, or the other thing is photograph. I work with a lot of people, how many work. You think that people, they think that they're quite sensitive. Actually, they actually.
So I always ask before I take pictures at someone's farm of them, and before using, especially if you're going to use someone's picture for a slideshow, PowerPoint, etc., to have media releases signed and approved for that. I know that Bev Behrens does a lot of articles, and when you interview people for writing your articles, you'll record it just to go back and have notes, right? And that's, you always ask them first. And that's sort of common for the reporters world, isn't it? Or people that are writing to want to record an interview. It probably depends on the situation. If somebody's telling you all of their medical details and you're sitting there recording it, probably not real good. Okay, so you have to use some wisdom with the recording, but writing notes is good. Getting them down quick. So this is just the intake form. If we go to the Appendix 1, page 128 is the blank worksite assessment tool that you can make photocopies of if you want to use it. If you want to download it as a PDF and type into it, you can. When I'm in my office on the phone, I like to type. When people are talking with me, I can type faster a lot of times than I can write. When I'm on the farm, if I'm sitting at the kitchen table, beware of having a laptop between you and them typing real fast. It's intimidating. I've been in conversations like that where someone is talking with me and they're sitting there madly typing away, and I don't like it. It doesn't feel like, I don't know what it feels like. Somebody else could explain why I feel that way,
I
but
feel like it's being recorded,
yeah.
which goes back to the other question, right? It seems impersonal.
It seems impersonal. If you could lay your laptop flat, like a notebook, you have something on your laptop that you can use a PDF and type into, a digital notebook. It's called a Remarkable, you said? Okay, and you can put a PDF into it and you can be filling out that PDF.
I would say it's more that it's hidden. If you're writing and they can see that you're writing, they don't necessarily have to read it. to know that you're not hiding it from them. But when you're typing it on a laptop, you can be typing, this guy's a big jerk.
So it's maybe the secrecy of it, yeah, Karen?
Putting information into a computer because what else are you putting in that computer where if you're writing, that they're more comfortable.
Yeah,
Because
but when we
they-
go to the doctor's office, they sit and ask us questions and type all over the place, right? We might not like it, but it's what happens. So, I just say, in the referral call, we need to know the basics of what's happening, asking some medical questions without prying too much. We're just trying to understand, is this appropriate? Is this something that I can help with?
Take it down into this format, put it in doc, delete it. And tell them, hold on, keep the recording. We have to do a whole part.
So if someone knew how long we were keeping the data, how long we were gonna keep their pictures, et cetera, if they would request, once you're done with my case, I would like everything deleted, that could be an option and we can share that with our clients. If we can help someone, we could just continue this initial phone conversation if we have time and the farmer has time, and do a much more in-depth interview, and then you can start asking more detailed questions. If it seems like an appropriate referral, okay, what's your date of birth now? And probably after a 15 or 20-minute conversation, you're gonna end up with an appointment date to go to the farm. And then it could just flow right into that very naturally, or it might be, I don't know anything about treating cows with a stroke, but here's your state veterinarian. Or it could be, I am not a seating and mobility specialist. I'd be happy to help identify one in your area. We could talk with your independent living center, or if someone is living in a nursing home and they want to be able to return to their private residence, that is something the independent living center would work with regularly. And I don't need to go and learn all of that. It's not my forte. But this is a principle of ethics for us to follow. Stay within our realm of specialty and what we're able to do well. And so to make referrals to other places is appropriate if we are not able personally to provide the service that they need. So after the referral seems appropriate, we begin this assessment process, and I think everyone can do this, most of it. It has a lot to do with listening, and we heard that yesterday. Many of you said that as we went around the room, the importance of listening. Some of you highlighted listening to the caregivers, but all of us listening for the human factors, the context, the activities. We're applying the HAT model in a practical way, and to use this assessment tool to help us not forget things. What I'll do a lot of times is I do the phone interview and I fill in what I heard and know. I ask more questions at the farm, fill in what I've heard and know, and then I can go back and see what have I missed and do follow-up conversations after that. So this really helps me, even after 20 years of doing this. There's sometimes I forget to ask a question or write down an observation. And so this book is very, very helpful with that. Once again, take notes, but beware of the laptop wall. So this is that puzzle, Bella. Go ahead. Okay. Yes. Yes. So Bella's comment was probably after the referral part, and it seems appropriate, and we're going into a more in-depth conversation. Explain to the person why it's important what we're asking them, so that it makes sense, the process that we're walking through. And in particular, when I am doing a vocational rehabilitation assessment, and it's important to know their income information to document that they are employed and wanting to continue that I'm asking for tax information. Woo! Not an intake call question, but for the farmers to understand why we need to know that. Once in a while I get strong pushback, but not very often. Once there's an understanding, once the rapport is built. So I think following this worksite assessment model and what we're learning today, it can be done well by an OT, even the intake information in a clinic, that you could learn a lot about a person's farm and background and context, asking these questions. Or it could be done by a seed salesman, just to think through these principles and have this assessment tool along. It doesn't have to be an AgrAbility professional necessarily, but that's why we're here. That's why there's agriculture people in the room and medical people in the room. We can both learn the aspects of it that we're not as comfortable with and use this tool to help us. Yeah.
Person-centered assessments that we might use, how important is it to stick to this format or,
What I would advise is having this on hand, and when a farmer shows up, you can review your other person center models and intake information, but you might need to add some questions, appropriate questions for the agriculture.
When you're on a phone call with somebody and they start to get irritated, frustrated maybe with you or with the process, how do you stay calm and how do you address that?
If I'm on the phone with someone or in person and they start getting irritated or impatient with the process, I would probably step back to the building rapport stage. Like, we can get back to the details of this farm assessment at another time. Let's talk about your dog or whatever. Just cool the situation off and probably move on and do something different and come back and revisit the situation and try to understand what's causing the irritation and the upset person at that time, and try to gather more information or clear it up or explain it in a different way, but probably at a later time. Let the situation cool. Yes,
I was just
Kevin.
gonna comment, it might be helpful to normalize things at the beginning too, that we ask a lot of questions, sometimes it can be a bit much, and hey, just let me know. And we take a break, take a pause, come back to it later.
Yes, to help people understand what to expect up front also. There's going to be a lot of questions. The other thing that I do is try to not ask anything that I can see. Sometimes we can make wrong assumptions from what we observe. We're going to talk a lot about observations, but if I can see it, I don't ask it. And that comes from experience also. Probably Jared could go to a beef farm and fill out most of the whole section on the beef operation without any questions. Not very many anyway. I have created my own Excel spreadsheet that I use because it's easier for me to type into that. Kevin has a PDF format that he uses. Pauline, right? You mentioned that you have your forms in your clinic that you can type into some kind of case management software, probably, and we might all come up with our own systems. I'm not sure what Michigan Rehab uses. Do you have a standard set of forms that you go into and fill out questions that you ask? And how do you handle it when any client comes in? Do you explain to them, I'm gonna ask you 79 questions now, get ready? keep it conversational as much as you can, even though you have a checklist you're filling out. Yeah. So it is pretty common, what we're doing this whole process. Case notes, it's really important for us to keep track of what we've talked about and having brief case notes. I basically do a daily case note for each client that I work with and keep track of the name, the date, the general information, and then I have a column for the next follow-up date. I'm an Excel junkie. I like to use it. I can reverse sort by the next action date and go see who I'm supposed to follow back up with today. Probably your case management software already does it. Maybe you just use your Outlook calendar, whatever works for you. But to be able to go back and filter for somebody's name and sort of read the story by date of here's what we've talked about, what I've suggested, what I've done. This is also helpful, Dave, for liability when maybe situations don't turn out like we had hoped, to be able to go back and have documentation of this is what I told you on August 17th, 2020. What did you do with that? So I think that documentation of what we've done, but it's not just to defend ourselves, but to remember what we've told people and how to continue being helpful with them. And if anybody wants copies of my blank spreadsheets to see if they would work for you, I'd be happy to share it. You can send me an email and I'll do that. So I think that we've talked about most of these things. The farmer's role on the farm is very important. What tasks do they need to do independently? What's been their thing? It could be one of our recommendations is you need to trade so that you're not driving the tractor and hauling the loads back to the farm that requires getting in and out often, but now you need to operate the combine, so you get in it and stay in it. That could be a good recommendation, but we need to understand the whys of each person's role. And if it might not be appropriate to recommend trading them out of a role and that we should accommodate it. So make sure to ask that in the interview, both the role and the why behind it, and listen a lot. And I have had times where a farmer will provide me with 2-inch thick stack of medical records. I'm not a doctor. And for me to go through all that is going to be meaningless. But I do need to understand, where do these medical conditions cause a functional limitation, that a person is not able to use their lower extremities, their upper extremities, their back, vision, hearing, those general areas that are limited in actually being able to do things. That's what's important. Actually, the functional capacity assessments that are done sometimes by an occupational or physical therapist are very helpful because they get to the practical nitty-gritty part. For me, as an assistive technology professional, not a medical person. So how much of the medical information is necessary for us to have? Sometimes when I have a referral from Michigan Rehab Services, they've taken the medical information and summarized it for me in here's the functional limitations resulting from these diagnoses. So, okay, going out to Mary's operation, very excited to tell about her medical conditions and what happened and the results of it and what she thinks of the doctors, and she's gonna be a beekeeper no matter what. And questions that I have to ask: how often do you get in and out of that truck? Because we can see things that look like limitations, but we don't know how frequently they're used. So the frequency of use is good interview questions to ask. And it was pretty interesting talking to her on the phone. Who do you work with? Nobody. I do it all myself. I get out there and I'm talking with her, and she talks about this grandpa and the other grandma, grandma, mom, dad, husband, grandpa. So, questions that we ask are important, and sometimes we have to ask them another time and get the rest of the information. So, in this case, she has a medical condition that is not being cured. It's not working well. Those injuries have had several surgeries already. The doctors are saying your job beekeeping is ruining you. There's no way you can heal if you keep doing this. And there's more surgeries coming up, and beekeeping is her life. That's the long and short of it. She has worked for both her own business and also working with another beekeeper who has 5,000 hives. So she has 240 hives that she takes care of. She loves marketing and selling it. And she keeps every bucket separate because each hive seems to produce a different color honey, and she knows where it came from, and she knows what type of, what do you call it, Rich? Foraging they're doing, what variety, what kind of plants that they're gathering the nectar from and the pollen is coming from, and she just is so excited. And she knows when she goes to set up and sell it, she can tell her customers where this came from and what it is, and they love it, and she loves it. Very important to her. She knows that bending down is really hard on her back, but she's in a hurry. She's got 240 of these to go through. It's got to get done the right time of the year. She needs to be doing inspections on the bottom box in this stack of hives, and she's just powering through it. But after she does a long day, she might be done for 3. I hear that a lot. So, Andrea?
Um, we can recommend like switch tabs or take a break from that. I have a challenge of since they're the worker, they're not a lawyer. So it's hard to recommend, hey, if you can stop doing that, go to something else, to try to break that up and maybe different. Another challenge is since they're, like any recommendation. You have to go through the whole. Well, that's a challenge too, because a lot of people don't want their bosses to know that they're, having machines. They're worried that, I have a client recently that I'm seeing that has told me that my boss knows about my percentage of. That if my boss knows that I have issues, and they have sick, and have health issues, let me go, and I can help.
So that's a cultural context that that person has to deal with, that they're working as an employee and don't have the freedom that Mary has to adapt and make it work for herself. She had the situation working for another person, and jumping ahead, she had to quit that. Just the relationship there and ability to continue the work, it just couldn't happen. It was a decision that she had to make. But with your employees, they don't speak the same language as their boss. They're here for a season. It's pretty hard to build rapport and context between the boss and the workers. And that's a big challenge. And so you're trying to help people in that context. And maybe what you would think is the best assistive technology for them is not gonna be accepted or practical, but there's other things that will help part of the way. And it ends up being the best thing for the situation, even though it's not, you can help me with my English language. The very best thing, optimal, is that the word, Kim? Okay, so even though it's not optimal, it's the best that can be done, which is better than nothing. But we still want to try working towards the optimal, don't we? So after doing this interview with Mary and start throwing out just some ideas from my past experience while I'm there, I've seen hive lifters that work pretty good, tailgate lifts on the back of trucks that can lower down and lift up loads into the back of a truck, and even just a little table that she could set up beside her hives when she's unstacking them, instead of putting it clear down on the ground like she is here, that she could take a box off, set it on a little table waist high, and then put them back on without bending clear down to the ground. So we have that kind of a conversation right away. And then I actually went back for another site visit, had more interview questions to ask her, because I learned in the first one how important the sales aspect was for her business, how that she was selling every single bottle of honey specifically to an end user. And at Samantha, at your farm, you're selling loads of wheat and grain to the elevator, or truckloads of hay. And so that's not quite as critical as what she's doing here, where she is working with the very end user. And that's a business model that's very good for small producers, that you get the retail price for your goods. And there will be a lot of our farmers that are doing that. So her goal here was to make a living. That's her business model. That she's not doing this for exercise. She's not doing this part-time hobby. She's not doing this just to maintain the family culture of farming. Her husband's not interested in beekeeping, and her other family members participate because she's so excited about it, but it's her baby, and she wants to make a living at it. And so during the second visit, I did learn who all her team was, and that's something important for us during this interview process, is to figure out who is the team. And her two surgeons were on her team, are on her team. I'm not sure that she wanted them on her team or liked what they were saying, but nevertheless, they're part of this team for us to all bring our different specialties to bear. And she told me about how much it hurt lifting and moving these 55-pound crates of honey. And she told me that somebody always comes with her to help move and set up. And once it's all set up, she can sit there and sell it. So this is all information gathering. We're going to spend a lot of time gathering information. We just need to know the pieces of the puzzle. Remember this, the A team, right? The AT team, the farmers, the CEO, the person with the disability. This is tough, isn't it, Andrea? Because with your clients, even though the person with the disability is supposed to be the CEO, there's someone, their employer, that can sort of say yes or no to what happens at their business.
There's a real difference between that being a temporary employment versus, if you had a more permanent situation too, then an owner might be more willing to engage.
Yes, and we have experienced that in some ways when the employee is a permanent employee instead of temporary. I would say, Andrea, that you have probably the most difficult context to work with that I've ever seen. of temporary employees in very physically demanding jobs, different languages and cultures. So she's a permanent employee there. She's not coming and going, and she still has that concern. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if that would be an appropriate referral to an independent living center to help with the questions of the rights of that person and the responsibilities of the employer at that time. Might be something for us to think about, making a referral into areas that we're not skilled at, which would be the legal side, perhaps, of employment and disability. So, thinking about who all is on the team, there's lots of people with different skill sets to help with that, and the assistive technology professional is one of them. The role of the assistive technology professional, which is the credential through RESNA that Song Hee mentioned, basically like the chief operating officer, that we are working for the customer, but helping to pull together all the pieces and parts, doing the evaluations, the research, making recommendations, implementing it, following up, that we want to make this all work from beginning to end for the customer. The assistive technology supplier, there's several of you here, Brian, David, another David. Assistive technology suppliers, Karen, play a really big role in the implementation aspect of the assistive technology cycle. You know the product attributes, you know the details, you know the prices, you know the parts, you know the maintenance that's required, you know how to set it up, you know the safety concerns, and to communicate all of that. When we got the scooter from David, they showed us how you take it all apart, put it back together. The question of, it was a used scooter, do you want new batteries, do you want the original batteries, all of these details of the product. The AT supplier is very involved, the warranty, and for the AT supplier to follow the lead of the ATP. Just understanding that the supplier is coming into the process in the middle of a long process. And there's different attributes as we, as ATPs, talk with the supplier about the different aspects of the assistive technology that they're selling. It might change what we recommend, or go back to the customer and have that conversation if we need to look at different aspects of it. So, yes.
Retractor lifts, we do two different tractor. One you stand on, and one is a seated. So the person can transfer from their wheelchair to a seat, lifts them up, transfers into the seat of the tractor. It had been referred to us that he needed a pilot. Yes, he could stand right now, but in the future, because he had a progressive disease, he was going to lose that capability. Tractor, I can stand. So we had to go back to the drawing board with vocational rehab and with the person that had said he wanted this, and get that all changed, because sometimes, yes, we know it's going to be progressive, but the person's not going to use it. It's going to end up in the scrap heap if you give them the wrong technology.
So the person wanted the assistive technology to grow with their need, and the assistive technology professional wanted to just take care of it all at once. And so you did the right thing, going back and adapting it to the way that the customer wanted it. But it was expensive because you had to deliver it twice. And so the assistive technology professional is doing lots and lots of coordinating and a lot of details with the suppliers, the back and forth conversations, and David has to rely upon me that I've understood the situation well with the customer. And we try to get it so that when David shows up at the farm to install the assistive technology, the farmer doesn't tell him to leave, or that isn't what I wanted. And most of the time we work it out. There's probably a lot of times you're frustrated with me and think, what was he thinking? I wish he was here, the one dealing with this. So it is definitely a team approach. And this is where I would say not everybody in this room is going to want to be an ATP, an assistive technology professional, taking the exam and getting this credential and participating in this complex of a process. However, the information gathering part, everybody here can do. And I encourage that, to think of that as a very appropriate role, and with this training to do that in an appropriate way. So if you are thinking of this as a career or a possibility, I'm asking everybody here to take the quizzes. And I really want your feedback if you want to write notes on the quizzes and say this was useful or not for me in my role. I'd like to hear that from you also. But if there's any possibility that in the next 6 years, you might decide you want this certification, that it would be valuable for you professionally or to improve your ability to serve people with disabilities, you might as well take the quizzes. You're here, and you will have that certified education credit that you did, even if you're not right now thinking you're going to pursue the ATP certification. It just gives you a lot of credibility. Even being here and taking this course is stepping up your understanding of providing these services. So this is probably too small for all of you to read, but if you did want to become an ATP, this is how you do it. It's a function of education, work experience, and passing the exam. Okay? So we could just use an example. Let's use mine. I had a bachelor's degree in a non-rehab science. I had a bachelor's degree in agricultural engineering, and so required 10 hours of AT training and education. You're getting that today. So if there's anybody here that has a bachelor's degree in a non-rehab science, you're getting your 10 hours today. I had to have 2,000 hours of direct assistive technology work experience with people with disabilities to qualify, and then I was able to sit for the exam, and I passed it. And so in 2011, I received my ATP certification. Does that make sense how this chart works? You'll have access to it when we provide the PowerPoints in the future. But even, I appreciate Resna so much for this, because a person with a high school diploma has a path towards this professional certification. It's longer. It's 30 hours of AT training and education, 6,000 hours of client service work over the course of 10 years. But 6,000 hours, if you work full-time for 3 years, that's 2,000 hours a year. In 3 years, you could have this certification and pass the exam. So it's really open. Resna has done a very good job. But I will tell you, the exam is challenging. I went just this last fall, I took the AT Fundamentals course, which is a 16-hour course that Resna teaches, a lot of information like what we're talking about. And then I took the practice exam, and I passed it, but I had to study. It's not just a gimme credential. It means something when you have the ATP credential. And so it means something internationally. It's recognized broadly, so I would encourage it. Okay, when we move into working with vocational rehabilitation, which is a funding agency to help people with disabilities find and keep a job, there's a lot more detailed requirements. When I'm working with a client that's going through vocational rehabilitation, we need to document their income to show that it's gainful employment, and medical records provided by doctors and rehab services, and to identify the activities that are specific to Mary for her operation. What is it that she needs to do to be successful? And they ask the question, is this a viable business? If we're going to invest in assistive technology for this farmer or for this beekeeper to continue doing her work, is the business going to be around in another year or two, or is it on the way out? Is it actually generating income, or is it a hobby? Because that is a reason that some people are farming. It's a hobby. They enjoy doing it, and they're generating some income, maybe just breaking even, but not earning a living for their family. And the purpose for vocational rehabilitation is for gainful employment. Kind of the baseline that I use in my mind is, and I think somebody from Voc Rehab told me this years ago, you can correct me, Mike, if I'm wrong, but if somebody can work half-time for minimum wage, that Voc Rehab would consider that as a job that they would accommodate. There's probably more details in your policy book, but that's what I use.
It's actually less.
It could be less than that.
Yeah, there's really not.
Okay, so that might be a farm rehab policy in Michigan specific to us. But anyway, the goal is employment. And so if a farmer's goal is not employment, and I'm there trying to make them be employed, and they just want to have enough to do to be active and have food for their family and enjoy this whatever operation that they're doing, I can make bad recommendations if I'm trying to push them into something that they're not. It's a much more in-depth, this would be another site visit with the rehab counselor, spend 2 to 3 hours. We're really trying to hone in on the specific goals that the farmer has and writing out the outcome measures. Sometimes the caregiver doesn't want to talk. Sometimes the caregiver won't even come around when I'm visiting a site. And that is communicating something to me. And it's a warning, but as much as possible to ask the caregivers and the coworkers their thoughts, have them part of the conversation, to be able to talk with them, sometimes in private, sometimes all together, and to ask the farmer what's their favorite part. That's the liking it of the SMILE acronym for prioritizing tasks. What do you like to do? Because I could accommodate for someone to operate the combine harvester, and if they are just bored to tears, a lot of farmers really enjoy harvesting and sitting in the combine and seeing all the corn and soybeans coming through, or wheat. I have a cousin, he can't stand it. He's so bored. He wants to be fixing things that broke and doing all kinds of other stuff. And so to accommodate someone to do a task that they don't like that would be the unmotivated reason for abandonment. Never even wanted to do that. Bella? So you're taking me back a whole nother step to prioritizing clients when there's a heavy caseload and thinking about how much time I spend with a client who's doing it for a hobby versus someone who's doing it for employment. And within the AgrAbility program, we will serve everyone. And within vocational rehabilitation, it has to be for the purpose of gainful employment. And I will tell you, I spend way more time with the clients that are doing it for employment. because their cases are more complex and larger usually. But I will do site visits, even if it's someone who has selected agriculture as a job goal and they're thinking about getting into it. I will provide them information and resources because the AgrAbility mission is to help people move towards that success. It probably has more to do with how much time I spend on each case than whether I would prioritize whether to serve them or not. I just serve them differently based on their goals. Yes. So if someone is a beginning farmer, maybe they haven't even started yet, I won't make a site assessment there because there's nothing to see. And I will refer them to their extension agent, to the beginning farmer resources, how to get started in farming. I know a lot about farming, but that's not my job in this role. And I run out of time if I do that. But I can refer them to the right people. And what I will do is say, here's types of agriculture that I think would be more accessible for you with your disability. And I think goats are a lot easier to manage than cattle. But it's harder to make money with goats than with cattle. So,
I think that just a couple of comments that are brought to mind with that is that there are many, many folks who require or seem to require an off-farm income
yes,
as well as the farm income. So we have to be careful too about saying, are you doing this for a living? Because maybe you are, but maybe your spouse has got another job, or maybe you work in the winter on, another job,
yes,
something like that. And then the other factor too is there's lots of small businesses that have enough expenses that their bottom line, well, is not gross wise, may not be huge. And so you need to be careful about saying they're not in it as a business.
yes. So there's all sorts of aspects of this. People with off-farm jobs that are farming on the side, and why are you doing 2 jobs? It'll end up being 2 full-time jobs pretty quickly when someone's has a farm and an off-farm job. And so we will serve them. And it's important to get actual medical documentation, especially when working with oak rehab, but also to hear from the farmer of where that medical condition is obstructing their ability to work. Sometimes the stress and mental illness and quality of life questions, we just need to ask. We can't always see that, and it plays a really big role. I think somebody yesterday mentioned that. Maybe Sam did. I forget. But the mental health, it's a layer, right? Kim talked about all the different layers maybe of a person's medical condition that play into the welding shop. Can be a really good local person on the team. It's good to ask about that. Or the farmer themselves might really get into that and like making their own things, and they could be part of the team in that aspect. Other evaluations, we use this word assessment and evaluation. Assessment is sort of the big overall, and the evaluation would be very specific. So part of the assessment process might be getting a audiologist evaluation of their hearing condition. So that's maybe splitting hairs on words, but there might be several evaluations done in the context of the larger assessment. I'm showing you lots of pictures of Mary in her context. We have to ask about things that are being done at different times of the year, because honey's just harvested now, right? When I was there in March, she wasn't lifting and moving supers and carrying heavy boxes of honey around. She wasn't extracting honey and loading the extractor and carrying buckets. She was filling bottles and taking them to sales venues. So we can't always go and do an assessment at every time of year. And that's another thing that this assessment tool is helpful for, is it'll walk through and help us ask those questions from the different times of the year. What else is going on at the farm? There can be other enterprises. There can be customers coming and going all the time and asking those questions. There might be windmills that end up contributing to the farm income. And they wouldn't be able to have the windmills if they didn't have the land. And so it becomes a piece of their whole income puzzle. And so finding out what else, or do they have a ministry? Do they have something else that they're doing at the farm that is part of their income, and to make sure to include that. So those are all interview type questions, asking what you cannot see and doing it in a polite way. So that's the end of that session. And we have one more to go. See what time it is. Okay, so we have 42 minutes until lunch. And I'm gonna stop this and bring up